Did you know the Great Pyramid of Giza wasn't built by aliens or slaves? And that the famous Trojan War might not have happened the way you think it did? For centuries, we've been told fascinating stories about ancient civilizations, stories that sound legendary, but most of them are myths. Today, we're going to uncover the truth and expose the biggest misconceptions about the ancient world. From ancient Egypt to Greece and Rome, our history is filled with incredible tales. But many of the stories we've been told about pyramids, warriors, or even lost civilizations are not what they seem. These myths have shaped the way we see the past. But today, we'll separate the legends from the facts and uncover the real truth behind them. Welcome to Chronicle Voyage, your destination for uncovering the hidden truths of history. If you love exploring the mysteries of the past, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our journey. The biggest challenge with ancient history is separating fact from fiction. Over thousands of years, stories have been passed down, often mixing truth with legend. Popular culture, movies, and even textbooks sometimes spread myths that make the past seem more mysterious or more dramatic than it really was. But when we rely only on myths, we miss the real achievements of ancient people, their science, their engineering, their art, and their daily lives. That's why it's so important to question what we think we know and take a closer look at the evidence that historians and archaeologists have uncovered. One of the most popular myths about ancient Egypt is that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built by aliens. The idea comes from the sheer scale and precision of the pyramid's monuments, so massive that people assume humans of the time couldn't possibly have created them. Over the years, movies, conspiracy theories, and even best-selling books have promoted this idea, making it sound almost believable. But the truth is even more fascinating. Archaeologists have uncovered remains of workers' villages right next to the pyramids, complete with bakeries, breweries, medical facilities, and housing. This shows that tens of thousands of skilled laborers, not slaves or extraterrestrials, worked there in shifts and were well fed and cared for. These were proud Egyptian citizens who saw pyramid building as part of their duty and service to the pharaoh and to the gods. Ancient Egyptians didn't need alien technology. They had brilliant engineering of their own. They used sledges, wooden rollers, rope, levers, and carefully designed ramps to transport limestone blocks. Copper chisels, hammers, and an incredible understanding of mathematics allowed them to align the pyramid with astonishing precision to the stars and the cardinal directions. So no, aliens didn't build the pyramids. Human ingenuity did. And in a way, giving credit to aliens takes away from one of the greatest accomplishments of human civilization, the determination, skill, and teamwork of the ancient Egyptians themselves. When most people think of ancient Egypt, they imagine mighty pharaohs resting forever inside the towering pyramids of Giza. It's a powerful image, repeated in movies and books, but it's not entirely true. The idea that every pharaoh was buried in a pyramid is one of the biggest myths in history. In reality, the pyramid was mainly a feature of Egypt's Old Kingdom, around 2600 to 2100 BCE. Later rulers chose very different burial sites. By the time of the New Kingdom, starting around 1550 BCE, pharaohs had abandoned pyramid building altogether. Instead, they were buried in a hidden place, now called the Valley of the Kings, near Luxor. This location was chosen deliberately. Pyramids were massive targets for tomb robbers, and most were looted soon after being built. The Valley of the Kings, carved into desert cliffs, was meant to protect royal burials and their treasures. Famous rulers like Tutankhamun, Ramses II, and Seti were all buried there, not in pyramids. What's more, many pharaohs had elaborate temples and mortuary complexes separate from their tombs, showing a shift in how they expressed power and prepared for the afterlife. So while the Great Pyramid remains a symbol of ancient Egypt, it represents only a specific era. The truth is that pharaohs adapted their burial practices over centuries, proving that Egypt's traditions were never static, but always evolving with time and necessity. The story of the Trojan War is one of the most famous tales from the ancient world. Heroes like Achilles, Hector, and the cunning Odysseus have inspired countless books, movies, and even video games. Many people believe the war described in Homer's Iliad happened exactly as written, a 10-year conflict sparked by the kidnapping of Helen, ending with the legendary Trojan horse. But history tells a more complicated story. There is some evidence that a conflict did occur in the city of Troy, located in modern-day Turkey, around the 12th or 13th century BCE. Archaeologists have uncovered layers of destruction at the site, suggesting that battles and sieges took place there. However, the epic version of the Trojan War mixes fragments of history with layers of myth, legend, and poetic imagination. Characters like Achilles or gods intervening in battle are part of storytelling tradition, not documented history. The reality is that the Trojan War, as we know it, is not a straightforward historical event, but a blend of memory, oral tradition, and creative retelling. It reflects the values, fears, and ideals of the ancient Greeks more than it records actual events. So while the myth contains kernels of truth, the war of legend with its heroes, divine interventions, and epic drama never truly happened the way the stories describe. When we picture ancient Greek art, we usually imagine gleaming white marble statues standing in perfect form. Museums around the world display them this way, and over time, people assume that this was the true style of classical Greece. But this is one of the biggest misconceptions about the ancient world. The truth is that Greek statues were originally painted in bright, vivid colors. Time and weather stripped away the pigments, leaving the white stone we see today. Archaeologists have found microscopic traces of red, blue, green, and gold pigments on many ancient sculptures. Using modern technology like ultraviolet light and 3D scans, researchers have even been able to reconstruct how these statues once looked. Instead of plain white, they were decorated with bold patterns, lifelike skin tones, and detailed clothing designs. To the ancient viewer, these statues would have looked far more alive and dynamic than the blank figures we see now. So why does the white marble myth persist? Renaissance artists admired the pure stone and copied it, reinforcing the idea that whiteness was classical beauty. This influenced Western art for centuries and shaped our modern imagination of Greece. But the reality is much more colorful, literally. Ancient Greek art wasn't cold and monochrome. It was vibrant, expressive, and full of life. Knowing this helps us appreciate the Greeks not just as great sculptors, but as artists who embraced color and realism. One of the most enduring myths about the ancient Maya is that their civilization mysteriously vanished overnight. Many people imagine their great cities abandoned in a single dramatic collapse, leaving behind only ruins in the jungle. But history tells a very different story. The Maya civilization didn't simply disappear, it transformed. Between the 8th and 9th centuries CE, many of the great southern cities like Tikal and Copan experienced decline. Factors such as overpopulation, environmental stress, droughts, and political instability led to a gradual weakening of these urban centers. Temples and palaces were abandoned, and power shifted north to cities like Chichen Itza and Uxmal. The Maya people adapted by moving, reorganizing, and continuing their culture in new regions. Even after the so-called collapse, millions of Maya descendants continued to live across Central America. Their language, traditions, and knowledge systems survived long past the fall of the great cities. In fact, there are still thriving Maya communities today in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. The myth of sudden disappearance comes largely from early explorers who stumbled upon abandoned ruins and assumed an apocalypse had taken place. But the truth is far less mysterious and far more human. The Maya didn't vanish, they endured, adapted, and their legacy is still alive. When people think of the Roman Colosseum, the first image that comes to mind is brutal gladiator battles, fighters clashing with swords, and crowds cheering for blood. Hollywood movies have made this image iconic, and many believe that was the Colosseum's only purpose. But the truth is much more complex. Yes, gladiatorial combat was a central part of Roman entertainment, but the Colosseum was far more versatile than most people realize. Historical records show that the Colosseum also hosted mock naval battles. Engineers flooded the arena with water and staged miniature sea battles using specially designed ships, giving the audience the thrill of warfare at sea. In addition, it was used for theatrical performances, executions, and reenactments of famous Roman military victories. Sometimes exotic animals were brought in for hunts and displays, turning the arena into a kind of live-action zoo. The Colosseum was not just a place of violence. It was a stage for political propaganda. Emperors used these grand spectacles to showcase their power, wealth, and ability to control both people and nature. The events united citizens in a shared cultural experience and reminded them of Rome's greatness. So while gladiator fights did happen, and they were undeniably brutal, they were only one part of the Colosseum's long and varied history. The myth of it being just a bloodbath oversimplifies a structure that was truly the heart of Roman public life and spectacle. One of the most common myths about the past is the idea that ancient people were somehow less intelligent than modern humans. We often imagine them as primitive, struggling to understand the world, while we see ourselves as advanced and superior. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Biologically, humans thousands of years ago were just as intelligent as we are today. What they lacked was not brain power, but modern technology. Despite this, ancient civilizations achieved astonishing feats. The Egyptians aligned the pyramids almost perfectly with the stars using only basic tools. The Greeks calculated the Earth's circumference with surprising accuracy long before satellites. The Maya developed complex calendars and had a deep understanding of astronomy. Ancient engineers built aqueducts, roads, and temples that still inspire awe, and in many cases still function today. These achievements required creativity, critical thinking, and advanced problem-solving qualities that prove ancient people were anything but dumb. If anything, they had to work harder with fewer resources, relying on ingenuity rather than machines. The myth of less intelligent ancients often comes from modern arrogance, forgetting that we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Their discoveries laid the foundation for today's science, architecture, and mathematics. In reality, ancient people weren't less intelligent. They were the pioneers of human knowledge, proving that intelligence. So, what have we learned today? Ancient history is filled with fascinating stories, but not all of them are true. We've uncovered the reality behind some of the biggest myths. The pyramids weren't built by aliens, and not every pharaoh was buried in a pyramid. The Trojan War wasn't exactly as Homer described, and Greek statues were once bursting with color. The Maya didn't vanish, they adapted and survived. The Roman Colosseum was more than just a blood arena. And most importantly, ancient people were just as intelligent as we are today. These myths remind us how easy it is to let imagination and legend shape our view of history. But when we look closer, the truth is often even more impressive than the myth. Ancient civilizations were not mysterious relics. They were real people, solving problems, creating art, and building legacies that still shape our world today. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these myths surprised you the most? Do you know of any other ancient myths that should be debunked? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Chronicle Voyage, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an episode. And before you go, check out this next video right here. It dives into another fascinating chapter of history that you won't want to miss.